A sports conference. We are now joined by SABC correspondent Nick Harper from New York. Nick, good evening and thank you so much for joining us. How was Tokyo's address received by the attendees and the media at the event?
Well, it seemed to be well received, Lulu. It wasn't a particularly long address, only about 30 minutes long. Initially, he had a bit of trouble getting going. He said he just got off an overnight flight from Johannesburg. It took him a little while to collect his thoughts. But once he got going, there was some real momentum, some real strength behind his speech. He spoke very fluently on FIFA and all the problems that that organisation has been involved with over the last few months. And that's really how he ended his speech, dealing with those issues and then also laying out how he would try to rectify the problems, talking about that mammoth task of trying to undo the crippling damage, he said, that had been done to the football's world governing body. So it did seem to be well received by the other speakers, the other attendees at this conference, and the media attending as well.
Now, Nick, did he exactly try to use this opportunity to lobby support from the greater sports community?
Well, in many ways, it wasn't a hard sell in terms of what he was saying. He started off by talking more about sport in general, talking about the fact that racism was a very big problem for the sporting world. And he talked about that from his own experience, from his own point of view, coming from South Africa, the problems that obviously the country had to deal with apartheid, before he then went on to dealing more specifically with the world of FIFA. So he wasn't really trying to push his agenda. He wasn't giving it a hard sell, but he was speaking very fluently and very well on those problems. And I think really his message of the need for transparency, the need for a strong leader with a good team around him will be taken up by the people who are looking to try and elect the next president, and they'll see that he is a potential and viable candidate, one of the 7 who are running for that presidency.
Now, Nick, did Tokyo go into detail on how he plans to clean up FIFA's image globally?
In many ways, this was more of a broad brushstrokes speech. He spoke about the damage that had been done. He spoke about the image problem and the need to rebrand. He did deal with some of the technical details that have happened over the last few months in terms of South Africa's problems and the bidding for the World Cup in 2010, and also why it perhaps didn't get it in 2006 when it went to Germany. That is something that once again resurfaced earlier on Tuesday, with raids happening in Germany. But he really went on to detail the fact that he felt that he was the man for the job. He felt that he came from good stock, from good experience, that he would be able to build a team around him. But he said that transparency was vital and he would need a whole team. It wouldn't just be him trying to clear out shop and rebrand FIFA. He would need a strong team around him.
Now, are we likely to see more international media attention owing to his bid as future FIFA president?
Well, undoubtedly, as we get closer to February, when we should be seeing a replacement for Sepp Blatter, there will be increased pressure on every one of these 7 candidates. And obviously, Mr. Sexwale is one of those who will be under scrutiny. Every single one of these candidates, surely at the moment, has to be whiter than white. The problems that we've seen with FIFA since May, since the dawn raids in Switzerland, and now the beginning of the extraditions to New York. There will be a court appearance from the first extradited man on Wednesday morning. Undoubtedly, any of the candidates who want to take over the top job need to show that not just they can run it, but their own personal lives and what they have achieved during their careers has been involved in no corruption. There have been no problems or things that might give those selectors pause for thought. So he needs to show himself to be whiter than white, which may be somewhat difficult because there will be that increased scrutiny over the next few months.
Now, Nick, did this conference touch on alleged bribery allegations that were leveled against South Africa earlier this year?
Well, that's something that they were going to look into later on within this two-day conference. In terms of Mr. Sexwale, he didn't really deal with those directly. It's not something that he touched upon during the course of his speech. It was something that the reporters afterwards had a chance to talk to him about. And he said that in terms of the two issues, the 2006 World Cup going to Germany and then the 2010 one to South Africa, he didn't really know why there were issues with either of them. He said that he didn't have answers, but that he felt answers were needed, and that, he said, was something that he would try and achieve if he took over the presidency of FIFA. But he didn't really dwell on it, except for the fact that he said there had to be a full investigation to find out exactly what had happened in both cases.
Now, Germany has also been implicated in the FIFA bribery scandals. Today, the country's football governing body's offices were raided. Did this come up during the conference at all?
That was something that, again, reporters had a chance to talk to him about afterwards. Again, he didn't really want to jump straight in and talk too directly on the matter. He did skirt around it slightly and drew it back to the fact that more governance was needed, more reform of FIFA was needed, and that there had to be this certain level of transparency to ensure that really these type of things didn't happen again. There have, since May, been very, very serious allegations levelled at top officials right through this world governing body. It isn't just perhaps one person. They have been levelled at a great many people across several layers of management, across several continents. And quite simply, Mr. Sexwale said that any of these problems that had been seen really had to be investigated thoroughly to get to the bottom of what may have taken place.
Now, Nick, in closing, can you take us through some of the issues that were discussed at the sports conference?
Yes, in terms of one of the biggest ones that Mr. Sexwale talked about, really in quite some depth, was racism. The problem, he said, that is really the number one problem facing all types of sport, not just football. He said it was something that was faced by many sportsmen and women, perhaps where we would see people not selecting them for certain teams because of their ethnic religion, because of the country that they come from, because of the colour of their skin. He said it was something that players have to deal with on football pitches, on tennis courts, having abuse shouted at them there within the stadiums, but also having abuse that they have to confront within social media, sometimes prejudices from the media themselves. He also talked about sponsors as well and said something that quite simply, the sponsors had too much power. He criticised the power that sponsors had, and he spoke in detail about the fact that just a month ago in October, some of the top sponsors for FIFA, including Coca-Cola and McDonald's, they were able to suggest that Sepp Blatter should step down. He didn't do that at the time. However, he was then suspended just a few days later. Mr. Sexwale said that these sponsors really were able to determine who was in charge of these governing bodies, and that was too much power to them. So those were some of the big issues that he wanted to address, that he wanted to deal with, but there are many more being spoken about during this two-day event here in New York.
Nick, thank you so much for joining us. And that was